Okay, welcome everyone. This is an open house to share information about the Dardenne Greenway extension from Mexico Road to Water's Edge Banquet Center. I am Marla McDonald and I'm with Great Rivers Greenway. Tom, you can go to the next slide. So this open house is happening over Zoom. Thank you all for being here. We do have some rules of the Zoom that we want to go over before we really dive into everything. So please make sure your video is muted or your sound is muted. And if you do have a question, we're going to hold all questions until the end and we'll get to you. So if it's something very, very urgent, you need to raise your hand, you can raise your Zoom hand. We can't, that's a function in I think it's yeah. If you go to the react button, it's a little heart react. There's a raise hand function if you really need something, but if it's a question about the project, please hold that to the end and we will answer those. Also, you can use the chat function to put questions in the chat that we will be collecting and responding to at the end of the presentation as well. Make sure when we do, if you do come off mute or it is the time for the question, make sure that others in the room also have space to talk and ask questions if they have them. And as I mentioned, and as we are aware, this meeting is being recorded so that we can share it with others. Take it away, Tom.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Tom Schweiss. I'm a project manager with Great Rivers Greenway. For those of you who don't know, we'll kind of start from the beginning about who Great Rivers Greenway is. So we're the public agency that was created by the vote of the people way back in 2000. And our mission really is to connect the St. Louis region with a network of greenways. We operate in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County. And we're funded by a 1/10 cent sales tax in St. Louis or in St. Charles County. Our region covers 1,200 square miles. We serve about 2 million residents, and we've got about 140 miles of greenways that we've built so far in our system. And I know some of you may or may not be able to see this map. It's a little bit small on the screen, but all these green lines on this regional map are all of the greenways that we've built so far. We've got about 19 or so active greenways that we're working on planning, designing, and building in our system. So what is a greenway, you might ask? So greenways are outdoor spaces connecting people and places. Each greenway is unique and reflects the character of the communities that it connects. So as you probably know, the St. Louis region is pretty diverse. We've got highly developed urban areas. We've got more natural areas. And we have greenways in all of those kind of different contexts, right? We really rely on the community to help guide our process through engagement, that help us determine what types of amenities we want to have on the greenways, whether that's, bathrooms, drinking fountains, playgrounds. All of our greenways have signage to help wayfind people around. The greenway itself is typically paved, so we typically have 12-foot paved trails as part of our system. This really offers greenway users the most accessibility. And we have connections on our greenways too. So the connections connect neighborhoods, they connect parks, they connect cultural destinations, business districts, schools. It kind of runs the gamut, and we really try to make connections that the community is going to use. And then conservation projects. So we do like to incorporate native landscaping, restoration work into all of our projects, and it takes a variety of different forms depending on the type of greenway. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about Dardenne Greenway, and you can see this big yellow circle across St. Charles County here. So this is the Dardenne Greenway, and the real vision for the Dardenne Greenway is to connect Brommelsek Park all the way to Riverside Landing Park at the confluence of Dardenne Creek and the Mississippi River. And when it's complete, which is it's a long-term vision, it'll be a hub of parks, trails, and open space all across St. Charles County. We've got some segments that are already built in Dardenne Prairie, in Cottleville, and in the city of St. Peters, and we're hoping to expand that as part of this project. Through our engagement process, which has gone on for a number of years, St. Charles County residents have told us that extending Dardenne Greenway to 370 Lakeside Park is a top priority. And this project that we're going to be talking about tonight is really the first step in that process. You can see the red circle there, and we're really talking about the tip of the arrow on the left side of that red circle. So we started community engagement on this project way back in 2022 in January and February. We had two open houses and a public survey, and we had over 300 responses or engaged with over 300 people through that process. And we really wanted to understand what the priorities for the Greenway would be. And you can kind of see those listed out below in descending order. So number one, folks wanted to avoid cars and roads. They wanted the trail along Dardenne Creek rather than along Mexico Road and Salt Lick Road. They wanted access to natural areas, wooded areas, creeks, and ponds. They wanted to protect environmentally sensitive areas. They wanted to have gentle slopes to accommodate wheelchairs, beginner cyclists, and children. So when you're pushing a stroller, it won't be too hard on you. And they would be all ADA compliant. They wanted connections to restrooms and drinking fountains, connections to, and then finally connections to amenities that the golf course currently offers, the concession stand and then the bar at Water's Edge Banquet Center. For also in our community engagement, we talked about potential trail improvements underneath Mexico Road. And you can kind of see from the picture here, we do have some flooding conditions that occur occasionally underneath Mexico Road when Dardenne Creek comes up. And some priorities for folks through our engagement were to add a bridge or a boardwalk over the creek so Greenway users can cross while avoiding the steep slopes and hairpin turns off of the current trail on Mexico Road. They wanted to elevate the Greenway to minimize flooding impacts to make sure that the Greenway was open and usable for most of the year. Improve the creek viewing experience, and then to add lighting. And then we listed some golf course improvements in here as well, again in descending order, to add a Greenway bridge to connect the trail to Dardenne Creek, add a resting space in the middle of the pond, benches, landscaping, etc. Connect the trail eventually to Salt Lick Road, and connect the trail to the St. Peter's Golf Club and Caddy's Bar and Grill. And then to rearrange the tee box of the 19th hole was the final response that we got. So through our engagement process, you asked for these amenities and we really did listen. So you can kind of see some renderings. These were early renderings that we came up with here. The first picture is underneath Mexico Road. So you can see an elevated boardwalk where the folks are riding their bikes and walking their dogs. You can see lighting up above that illuminates the space, makes it feel safer for Greenway users. And then this early render of the boardwalk, which provides, access across Dardenne Creek, but also an overlook so folks can look at the creek, enjoy nature, and all of that. It also doesn't show in the rendering, but we also are looking at eliminating that hairpin turn and the steep slope off of Mexico Road. Again, this is another opportunity for along the boardwalk and early rendering of another overlook over Dardenne Creek to provide comfort and shade. There are lots of opportunities along this section of Dardenne Creek for restoration, native plantings, and tree preservation. So we want to make sure that we're preserving as much of that habitat as we possibly can in the project. And this is the alignment from like a 30,000 foot view. It shows the extent of the projects that we're looking at. So down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see Mexico Road where it says existing Dardenne Greenway. Phase 1 is the red highlighted area that goes from Mexico Road up to Dardenne Park. The orange segment goes from Dardenne Park all the way up to Water's Edge Banquet Center. And then up at the top of your screen, you can see those green dotted lines that show future Greenway connections. So eventually we want to continue, building out this Greenway. But we have a variety of different ways that we could potentially extend it. And we want to hear from the community, obviously. And that's a future effort that we'll be undertaking. So I'll pass it over to the design team now to kind of talk through phase 1 details. And again, this is from Mexico Road up to Dardenne Park at this time. Jeff, I think you're up.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Davis. Actually, Ben, you're up.
Yeah, I'll take over for this one quickly. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Knight. I'm an engineer who works at HR Green. HR Green was the civil engineering consultant for this project. And what you're looking at here is a basic overview of the trail alignment and what's going to be built for this first phase of the project. We don't have any landscaping details or renderings shown on this map, but we will be showing those in the upcoming slides. Just to give you guys an overview of what's going to be built for this first phase. So if we start at the left side of the screen, we'll call that the beginning of the project, just south of Mexico Road. We're going to be tying into that existing asphalt. Um, and then our new trail will be going underneath Mexico Road still, but it will be on an elevated boardwalk to try to get trail users above that flood elevation because like we showed earlier, there's frequent flooding underneath that Mexico Road bridge. Then after you come out underneath Mexico Road, we're going to be ramping uphill, both on an at-grade trail and then on an elevated boardwalk until we get to a new pedestrian bridge that spans. That pedestrian bridge is shown in blue there. And then after you cross over the bridge, we're going to continue on an elevated boardwalk through that heavily wooded area. And the reason for all of this being on elevated boardwalk is to try to get as high as we can above that flood elevation. And we've maintained an elevation that's above the 100-year flood elevation. So hopefully that will rarely flood. Another thing to note about this boardwalk section is that the existing asphalt trail that's out there right now in that heavily wooded section, that will be closed off to the public once this boardwalk is built. That will only be accessible for maintenance vehicles. So we're going to have a gate near Mexico Road, and then another gate closer to St. Peter's Golf Club that blocks off that existing asphalt path. And then after we end the elevated boardwalk there, the trail will be basically even with the ground level, and it will basically be following that existing asphalt trail all the way to Dardenne Park. And for areas along that at-grade trail where you get close to tee boxes or you get close to the golf greens, we'll be having an 8-foot tall protective fence to help block shots if there's any bad golf shots. We want to protect the trail users. And then for areas where it's not in the line of fire, we will still have a 4-foot tall fence just to make sure that golfers aren't wandering onto the trail and trail users aren't wandering onto the golf course. And then at Dardenne Park is where this first phase will end, and the next phase will begin right after that.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Davis. I'm a landscape architect with DG2 Design. Uh, this plan that we're showing you now is the alignment that Ben had just spoken to. So beginning at the left, what we um, what we wanted to show in this plan was, again, that connection underneath the Mexico Road. But as for the landscape along this alignment, there's a lot of unique opportunities to enhance the existing conditions. And we have conditions like meadows that will become inundated during certain times. We have denser woodlands, and we actually have some hillsides, which are in the upper reaches of the land either side of the Greenway. Um, One thing I wanted to point out, we have indicated on this plan some white lines labeled A and B. Those will refer to some sections that we're going to show you here in a little bit, and we'll get into more of the landscaping. Two other things I wanted to point out. As the bridge spans Dardenne Creek, there's an opportunity on both sides of that bridge for overlooks. And then as you continue up the Greenway on the boardwalk to where the word boardwalk is written, that's the second and or third overlook along this alignment. But the plan illustrates three distinctive landscapes that we're going to um, add to and supplement to those existing conditions. One is down when you come out from underneath of Mexico Road. There's some open space there that is tends to be more sunny and upland, so there's opportunity for native grasses and native landscape in that area. As you proceed northward and cross the bridge, that area is kind of a secluded, shaded area along both sides of the boardwalk. So we're going to supplement that area with landscape that actually is conducive to growing in those conditions. And then the third is to the upper or on the, let's say, north is to the right, so it'll be on the left side of the boardwalk. There's some upland areas there. When coming off of the boardwalk and back to the on-grade situation heading north towards Dardenne Park, there's going to be some supplemental landscape in there. We're trying to avoid as many of the existing trees as possible. And that landscape will be much more open in that area and will be fitting and kind of blend in, if you will, with the golf course itself. Next. So this is a view from Mexico Road looking north. There's private property off to the right side of this image. But what this view begins to illustrate is that one landscape in the middle, the larger portion of this image where it's sunny, there's some existing trees. And what we really want to do is restore that area to look like a wet meadow and a native prairie. But the real star in this image is the elevated boardwalk itself. So where the two bicyclists are, that's the on-grade portion of the trail, and where the railings start with the green Great Rivers Greenway signage, that's where the boardwalk begins. So the elevation of the boardwalk itself remains consistent, but the ground underneath varies from just a few feet to taller heights in areas as the grade along the creek and the remainder of the greenway kind of fall away and undulate. In the middle of the picture is an image of the bridge itself. What we're calling for there is to actually use the graphics for GRG as a branding opportunity. So this area, that bridge will be very visible from traffic going north and south on Mexico Road in that area. And then as far as colors, the darker green on the railings and the two types of blue on the bridge itself are actual standard colors used by GRG. And beyond that blue bridge, you can see the elevated boardwalk actually continuing on the west side of Dardenne Creek. In the middle of the bridge structure, I wanted to point that out. There's going to be that overlook opportunity so people can pause there and actually look down into the creek itself. Starting at the southern end or eastern end, I would say, this is a view from underneath of the bridge deck itself. On the right side, that larger concrete-looking materials is the actual 12-foot boardwalk. That is elevated to alleviate some of the flooding concerns. And since it is elevated, we do have railings on either side of that boardwalk itself. The darker gray or black to the left is the existing trail, and we're leaving that in place for maintenance purposes, as Ben had pointed out. We're doing other things like new lighting on the underside of the bridge itself, and we're doing some painted graphics on the bridge abutment to the left side. Again, those are GRG standards, helping us kind of build this theme. And beyond the blue is that bridge structure that crosses the creek, and there's some additional signage there calling this portion of the Greenway out as the Dardenne Greenway by Great Rivers Greenway. So you can kind of get a look and feel for what that would look like both underneath and above from Mexico Road. This is a cross section down near Mexico Road. Some of the taller vegetation you see in this image is really indicating existing trees. So for instance, on the right side, there's some cottonwoods and trees at the lower elevations near the creek that are going to remain. And then the elevated boardwalk you can see as called out there. As I mentioned earlier, in some places this is quite elevated over the existing conditions. And this section gives you a good feeling for the height of the boardwalk. And underneath of that would be the 100-year floodplain. So this portion is envisioned as not being flooded uh, most of the time if possible. So additionally in there, we've included and we've identified a current condition that actually will be flooded, but we've called the wet meadow. And the pink and the white are indicating native tree planting in that area, but also underneath of that are native grasses and meadow grasses that can take inundation during periods of the year. This is a view further north, still on the boardwalk, but north of the bridge. And this is the other overlook as you are traveling along the Greenway. I did mention earlier that the green color, we're using a darker green color for the railings themselves, so they really won't stand out and have more of a harmonious relationship to the surrounding context. But at this area, Dardenne Creek is actually to the right, and you can see some of the new tree species and things like that that we're calling for along the Greenway. And another section. So to the right, the boardwalk, as it travels further north, it encounters some higher elevations of the Greenway and the project scope. You can see Dardenne Creek on the right, existing vegetation. There's an area that's fairly flat in there where the existing trail currently sits. We've called that out as the maintenance access, so that existing asphalt will remain, but we're doing supplemental planting in an area that frequently floods, and we're calling that the forested wetlands. And then to the left in the upper terraces and the upper reaches and elevation, there are species that are more conducive to being drier, if you will, and filling in and helping kind of protect views and screen views of some of the backyards and neighboring residences.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So this sort of wraps up a little bit of our presentation, the formal presentation here. We'll be opening it up for questions in just a couple minutes, but just talking about next steps here. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier when we showed this map, we did divide this project into two distinct phases. For phase one, the first bullet point says receive MoDOT approval. We actually did receive approval from MoDOT last week. So we'll be taking this project out to bid fairly soon. We haven't really dialed in a date quite yet, but we anticipate construction to begin sometime in late spring of this year. For phase two, which is the section that goes from Dardenne Park up to Water's Edge Banquet Center, the project team just kicked off this project from a design perspective. We're going to continue design through 2026. This one has a little bit of a longer time frame. You see there aren't any additional bullet points under here. We're going to continue to work on design, and then eventually we'll be taking this project out for construction as well. But we anticipate it'll probably be a couple of years before we reach that point. Thank you very much. We've got Marla's contact information here So if you need to contact her, she's got her phone number, and email address here as well. So please reach out with any additional questions that we don't take care of tonight. But at this point, I'd like to just kind of open it up for questions from the group.
Thanks, Tom. So folks on the call, if you have a question that you'd like to ask out loud, you can raise your hand and we will call on you, or you can put your question in the chat box as well. I'm also going to be sharing a link to an online form. If we don't get to your question tonight, you can fill out the form and submit your question to the project team to get back to you. All right, there is a question in the chat from Martha's iPhone is the caller. When do you expect phase 1 to be finished?
That's a really good question. Ben or Shane or Dan, can you guys remind us what the expected construction duration is on this one?
Yeah, Tom, this is Dan Shane with HR Green. We're expecting this to be one construction season, so probably in the October, November timeframe is when we'd have the whole project completed for the phase 1.
Thanks. There's another question from Sean asks, will the existing walkway over Mexico Road be removed? Walkway, sorry, Sean corrected it. Walkway along Mexico Road over Dardenne Creek.
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
So I can jump in and answer that too. The city's taken on a project to widen that pathway that is connected to Mexico Road right now. That's currently under construction, and should be completed within the next few months. So there'll be alternate ways to get across the creek. One with that connection on Mexico Road, and the other one with the Dardenne Greenway bridge that we're going to build as part of this project.
Great. Patty just commented, I'm thrilled to hear native plants will be used in this project. So we love that too. Donna asks, is the bike trail going to go between the lakes as phase 2, part 2 moves forward?
Yes, we're currently anticipating going between the two lakes at the golf course.
And Mike asks, if you need to drive to get to the Greenway, where will there be parking?
That's a great question, Mike. So parking will be at the Water's Edge Golf Center. So we'll have parking for Greenway users at that location.
I'll also point out for this first phase of the project, you can access the trail from the Dew Court parking lot. There's an existing parking lot there now. We're going to keep a parking lot in that location close to Dardenne Park.
And then Donna offers a suggestion in the chat, a park with picnic tables at the old trail off Mexico Road. That's all that's in the chat right now. If there are other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat.
Donna, I just to clarify your suggestion, are you suggesting the addition of picnic tables at Mexico Road, or and feel free to unmute yourself. I can see you. If you just want to talk it through, that's fine. I just want to understand your suggestion.
Well, it seems like they cut down some trees in that area. You said you were going to widen the bike trail. There's quite a bit of room there. I just thought it isn't. I walked that area quite a bit, and it's a nice place for a couple of picnic tables.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Tom asks, when or Tom put a comment in the chat. When walking on the boardwalk bridge and you stop to look out over the creek, will some of the littler kids be able to see?
Marla, I can answer that. Yes. So the idea is that we have to meet guidelines for public safety. So they have to be the railings themselves have to be a specific height of 42 inches. But we're using vertical pickets with spacing in between so that somebody that's underneath of that height will be able to view out. And we're also including two benches at that location as well.
There's a comment thanking the team for this presentation. It's going to be fantastic. And then Tom also asks, will the entire boardwalk be constructed of concrete?
Yeah, it'll be precast concrete.
And then Jason in the chat says, thanks and can't wait to see it finished. Can you talk about the financial cost and the funding resources?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about, we can't really talk about maybe specific costs. We're estimating, well, we do have grant funding for this project that we have a TAP grant, which is a federal grant, which is Transportation Alternatives Program for $1.5 million. I think at this point we're estimating this project to cost around $6 million or so. And all of the funding comes from the additional funding comes from Great Rivers Greenway's capital budget.
Which I, excuse me. So I just wanted to add, Jason, I know you jumped on a bit later. As far as our capital funding, where our funding comes from specifically for St. Charles County, we do have a 1/10 cent sales or a 1/10 cent tax that we are funded through.
Thanks, Gil.
Yeah. And then one more thought, I wanted to jump back a little bit. And when Tom asked about being able to see for the smaller kids out there, I didn't know if Jeff Davis, if you could speak to maybe the screening itself, as you know, the graphics along the bridge. I could see some folks being concerned of that being like a solid material and not be able to see through or things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So what Gil is mentioning is the blue graphic on the bridge itself. It's composed of aluminum panels that allow us to paint the larger graphic for GRG on there. The intention is that where the overlooks occur on the bridge itself, those will be the main uh, places in which you can pause and actually look down into the creek. But for the length of the bridge itself, we didn't want to take away views. So those panels are actually composed of aluminum 4x8 sheets, and they're going to be laser cut with a perforation inside of them so that as you're traveling along, you're going to get the glimpse of the landscape around you. But it's when you come to that overlook itself, uh, the whole story will kind of unfold for you right above the creek. So where that kind of green color where the hand was just located, that portion is indicating the overlook itself. We've taken the panels off of that and reapplied the green railing in that area so that the blue will be interrupted by these overlooks. And at that location, you're going to have railing, which is a guardrail height where you'll be able to look north and south along the creek.
Appreciate that, Jeff. I just wanted to make sure folks were aware that that is not a solid panel going up across all the way there. You can think of it kind of like a mesh to some extent.
Yep, correct. Thank you.
Aaron asks in the chat, will these sections of the trail be included in the Adopt a Greenway program in the future?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. If folks aren't familiar with our Adopt a Greenway program, it's one of our volunteer opportunities where community members can adopt the segment of the Greenway to help clean up trash, report issues and other things like that. Also, landscaping can be an option as well. So yeah, we definitely keep that in mind, and it's one of those programs that's continuing to grow. So I can see this as definitely being an opportunity in the future.
Any other questions from folks? We'll be on. This goes till 6, so we're sticking around. If folks need to hop off, that's totally fine if you got your question answered. That's the information we had to share, but if there's any follow-up questions, we're happy to continue the conversation. It looks like most folks are hopping off the call. I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, y'all.